Who's that? Oh, yeah, is it Instagram account?
No, he doesn't use photos.
Oh, yeah, I know, but in Illustrator you can still yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it is, but you have one is from the action, one is like translated from like also from
All right.
Oh, these were like overlay. Like, I think like a blend.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's begin. Next week is what is next week? Spring break. I wish. We don't have spring break. It's not high school anymore. It's reading break. You need to read during the break. Otherwise you don't get the break. No. Okay, let's start. So we're gonna go on to go a little deeper and a little bit more complex to see how far we can go before it gets too much, becomes too much. Too much for you to handle. Let's start with a simple document. So, and I'm also going to be introducing some new items here and there. It's like a feature more than anything else. So we're going to get introduced with SVGs and then other interactions. Now, have you learned SVGs from Damon yet? Okay, so you will eventually learn what SVGs are. Anyone know what SVGs are? No, but good guess. It's vector graphics, scalable vector graphics. There's a difference. Vector graphics is about math. Regular graphics is about pixels. So you know when you take a picture and you zoom in, right? Those are all pixels. So what happens when you zoom in? It gets blurrier and blurrier and blurrier. But if you use vector graphics, they just have something called vector points, which you'll learn with Damon eventually. And they will use math to calculate what color to use and where to paint. So no matter how much you zoom, it will always stay with the same quality and the same resolution. So to do vector graphics, we do have to use Illustrator, sadly. But it won't be hard Illustrator work. I mean, unless you know nothing about Illustrator, then it's hard Illustrator work. So if you recall, last year, one of the tutorials, do you recall all the stars and everything? Those are all vector graphics. Does anyone remember? In one of the tutorials, where after you host it up, there's a billion stars on the screen. I don't remember, it was midterm. So we're going to try to build something similar with vector graphics as well, and with our web. So let's make a star. That's my star. right there. Best star. You can do whatever you want with the star. You don't have to make a star. You can make anything you want. It's just, like, this doesn't really matter what you make. I just make a star. That's all. So if you want to keep the AI file so you can modify it later, feel free to. You can save it anywhere. But what we really want isn't the AI file. What we really want is the SVG file. So when you save us, there in the format, underneath the format, there is something called SVG. We want to save that SVG in the same location as our lab. Now, you don't actually need the SVG file. All you really need is the code that does the calculation. For example, on the bottom left here, you don't really need to save it. You can just press on SVG code, and you'll see something similar to HTML. You just copy all the words from SVG to /SVG and paste it like so, and you would see right away if you open your index, you would see that star. Right. That's vector graphics. When you look at this, you'll notice there's no coloring. Well, there is some. There's no real coloring on there. Doesn't have any pixel information, but what it does have is point information. So it knows where to draw certain vectors and color the entire thing. And as I said before, it's good because there is no loss in quality. No matter how big it is, no matter how much bigger you make it to be, there's no loss in quality. It will always be the same quality. That's why a lot of tech companies hire graphic artists to do vector graphics, and only vector graphics. That's why they if you're going to a tech company, you have to know Sketch. That's a pure vector graphic software to help you. But we are going to save it. So press OK to save it so you can get a SVG file in the same folder. You see that star.svg? And if you are in your bracket, make sure that it's in the same folder. If you're in a bracket, you can always get the SVG code back by clicking on it. And you would see the exact same thing from before that you can use. Or a more convenient way is to just not type out the SVG and just do image source equals to star.svg. Now, there are pros and cons of having type out the entire code itself or using an image source. If you use an image source, then you can change the vectors with your script. For example, if I want my star to all of a sudden do some really weird stuff on the screen where the point move upward, I can't do that because it's under image source. Right. If I want to change everything, the attribute, the point attribute manually, I will have to copy and paste it in here. But for today's tutorial, today's lab, we're not going to be doing something so crazy like that. That we manually change the points of the polygon. That would be really fun, but we're not doing that. Okay, so it'll give you the same star. Now the good thing about the image here, now we can ID the stuff, right? ID equals to my star. Actually, you know what? Let's do a class as well, stars. And we'll have a CSS folder with our CSS inside. App.css. Link href css app.css rel style sheet. And type is text/css. Right, because of that, then we can start stylizing. We can start styling our stars. It's gonna have a width of 50 pixel and a height of 50 pixel. And you would notice then your new vector graphics is like a small little vector star on the screen. And the advantage of something like this is you can make it as big as you want. You can make it 1,000 pixels, 9,000 pixels. It will have no blurry loss of quality. So if you're like you know you're an artist yourself, you can draw everything through Illustrator. Then you can draw something potentially that will never have any loss in quality. No matter how much you expand it or compress it. And with that, because now that we can ID and class them, we can do scripting with it. So we're gonna source our script, and we'll just make it simple, where we will make our vector graphic bigger when our mouse is over it, and make it smaller when our mouse is not over it, out of it. So var my star is equal to document dot query selector my star. And okay, hold on. Let me not make it too confusing. I'm gonna use a small s so that it's consistent with my ID. When we click on it, we will change it width to 200 pixel and the height to 200 pixel. Actually, we're not going to click on it because we're going to use something else. We're going to do a mouse enter on it. And we are going to also do a mouse out. And it will go back to 50. So different kinds of listeners. Mouse enter, mouse out. So mouse enter, what does mouse enter mean? That element, that star. And mouse out? It leaves the star. Simple stuff. Okay, so let's see what happens. Mouse enter, mouse out. Looks normal, which is good.
How's that different from
hover? Hover? This is hover. Hover is just mouse enter and mouse out.
Okay.
It's exactly what it is. Hover is just two combined. So first came mouse enter, mouse out. Then hover came in CSS just to combine both. Oh, let's do some transitioning just for fun, because we all love transitions. Transition. width of 1 second and height of 1 second. Do some neat little animation and back up. Right. So good thing is no loss in quality, no blurriness of it. Right. That's the beauty of SVG files. Even if it's to 2,000 pixels, you will never have a loss in quality. But 200 is good enough. So SVG files, very nice to have. Probably you'll be using it throughout the rest. Building your own ones. That's yours.
Is it possible to make it like PNG? You know what I mean? Because right now it has a border. So we're just how to make it easy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
He says like probably because your SVG is too big. It's such a box itself. They're detecting this entire artwork. So if you want to make your artworks small, you can actually get out of the artwork. You're seeing your SVG file.
Instead of the line
You can close your first. So it's important for your artboard. If your artboard is huge, then the box of the star would be pretty huge. Like it would never, it would like you would be mousing in like here and it'll still go through because your artboard. So if your artboard is like, for example, super huge like that, then it'll detect the entire artboard, and you probably don't want that. All right. So make sure your artboard is nice and small.
Oh, thanks.
All right. I hope you're all prepared because the next few parts are going to. Well, are you not prepared because you're still working on it? Or?
I'm not prepared because it's just all
So.
There's no weird reason I didn't. It's not like I messed up.
All right, anyone else? Because we are going in. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're going to check out other listeners that we can play with, such as our keyboard. Not my star. Oh, that's wrong. Window this time. The whole window is gonna listen to an event. And the event that it's gonna listen to is gonna be called a key up. That's when your keyboard's key goes up. And it's gonna perform the following function. So this goes a long way. The first piece of information that this goes along with is that you should know that everything is made of numbers and characters, including your keys. That every time you press on a key, a number is generated or a character is generated. But how do you know what number and what character, right? In fact, every hardware that you interact with and software on your computer, they give you information. They send information back and forth. So whenever my mouse moves, I'm actually receiving information from my mouse. The mouse is sending a package of information in there. How do we know what the information is? Inside the function, if you ever search online, you'll notice that inside the function, there's an argument that the mouse sends information through. It's called an event package. Basically, your mouse packs all the information about the mouse into a variable and sends it over through the function. So you'll notice that people would type E within the function itself if you search online, or EV, or event. It doesn't matter what you're name it, but people use the word E or EV so that most people can understand that is an event information package. Right? Every time they listen to an event, some information from the mouse is speaking with you. Hey, let's console log out what this is. Console log out so we can understand what we mean by communication. So every single software and hardware communicates, and you can get their information. That's how we can get people's IP address, where they're located from, what kind of software they're using at the very moment, and all those on. You're sharing a lot of information. But more importantly, if you console log it out, make sure you have the EV there, and you mouse over it, you'll see a package information called mouse event. If you open it up, you can see all the information that your mouse is sending you. And some of them should be recognizable. For example, there's something called page X and page Y. What do you think page X and page Y is?
X-axis, Y-axis.
For what? So for where your mouse is when you mouse enter, right? So as soon as my mouse enter, that's my mouse was at 41 and 57. So this, it looks right? Because if I'm over here, it looks like I'm 41 pixels to the left and 57 pixels from the top. And there's a lot of interesting things in here. For example, Alt key. What do you think Alt key means? Whether you're pressing on your Alt key when your mouse enters? Let's try it. What's the Alt key for a Mac? Does anyone know? I think it's Option. So hold Option. So collapse, hold Option, and mouse enter, and see if that Alt key changes from false to true. It does, right? So there's a lot of information. All the button and buttons, right? Lots of different things you can look at in here. Timestamp, target, type, etc., etc., etc. So that's good. Going from this information, that means your keyboard also sends information back, right? So let's comment this out over here. We don't need to see it. But we do want to see what our keyboard sends back to us every time we press something. So we're going to console.logout EV over here instead. So let's try to press a key and see what comes back. Keyboard event. And in the keyboard event, you're going to notice some things that are different. I mean, it still has Alt key, which is good. But you'll notice that there is something called code, key, and key code. And as you press different keys, you'll notice that they change. So I press A on there. I'm going to press B. Code is key B, key is B, and key code is 66. So if I want to see those individual ones and not the entire thing, because that's important, right? I want to know what key I'm pressing. I can just go console.log ev.keycode, or with a comma, you can go ev.key, so you can see both at the same time. Where does key and key code come from? From the package. So dot key and dot key code. So that I'm more specific, and when I press, oops, not from inside, but when I press from the outside, I can see just the key code and the key itself. So each key is related to a number, or each key is related to a character. Okay, let's make it a little bit simple here. Let's say if the S key was pressed, then alert you press S. Okay, try doing that on your own. If the S key was pressed, then alert that you press S. So since it's related to a character or number, you can make a comparison, right? If the S key was there, what does that mean? What's the comparison here? Maybe if the number is equivalent to something, or maybe if the character is equivalent to something, then alerts out some words.
Yeah, that's the problem. That was specified.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you compare two numbers? What do we do so that we can compare two things? Well, what's a symbol to compare two different things? Equals equals. Okay, you know that it's a equal equal. That's number one. So you know that it's an if statement, right? So when someone press a key, right? Let's say if 8 equals to 9, then that's comparison, right? Is this gonna give me a True or false right here? Why? Okay. Good. Okay. Very nice. So if 9 equals 9. Okay. So what is the number that I'm trying to get here? What's the key that's associated to S? 83. So if 83, oops, not here, double equal, if 83 is equivalent to 83, like that? So how do I know what's the number of the key right now? That's the better question. The key code, right? This variable is the one that stores all the numbers that I'm pressing, right? So it's not 83 equals to 83, but if the whatever I'm pressing right now is equivalent to 83, then alert, you've typed S. So if you're stuck on if and else statement, think about what you're doing. Are you doing a comparison? Are you looking for something that's bigger or looking for something that's smaller? And what are the two items you're comparing? Is one of them a variable or is one of them hard-coded? Because there's only one S, right? If there were multiple S's, that would be a different thing. So when we press S, you've typed S. But when we press anything else but S, it would not tell anything type S. Vice versa, not vice versa. In the same way, you can use ev.key. Right? You won't be comparing it to a number. You'll be comparing to a character. So how would that look like? If I was to use ev.key. If ev.key is equivalent to which character am I looking for? S itself. Then alert, you've typed S. And they do same thing, right? Same thing. Then you might venture into a question. Why use one and not the other? When would you use one and not the other? What about 9? What should if I want to detect 9, how many 9s are there in your keyboard? On a regular keyboard? 2. Well, 1 on the numpad, right? So you'll notice that they both have a different key code. Or not, never mind. If they should, technically. But there are keys that have different key codes. Interesting. I don't know if they changed it, but there are keys that have... Oh, okay, so there you go. Dash. One is 189 and one is 109, but they both are dashes, right? So you'll notice that if you want a specific key, then you would use the key code because there's only one number associated to it, supposedly. And if you want a specific characters, then it's good. You use that. Other things like capital S, right? Capital S, capital letters, and whatnot. So that's how we detect the keys. When you ever, if you ever wondered that you can press enter and then they log in automatically, it's because they're detecting what the keys that you're pressing. What's the key for enter? Does anyone know? 13. That's a very common key. And this is also how you do key logging. Does anyone know what I'm talking about when I say key logging? So if you download any weird extensions on your Chrome, there's a script on the background that adds an event listener. And every time you press a key, they'll send the key code to a server. and they'll remember every single key code that you type. Well, that's keylogging. That's right. So when you go on, like for example, the Texas site that you go on. So for when you go on Minecraft or something like that, it'll be like, okay, it's time to add an event listener. Key up right there, and then type your username, type your password. All the key code gets stored in the background, and they'll know exactly what keys you've typed during that time and guess your password. Very simple keyloggers. I don't know. You're gonna have to check yourself. All right. Okay, but what we want to do isn't just to alert. Alert is not that fun. But what we really want to do isn't alerting. But we want to create more stars on the screen. So how will we go about doing that, right? Right now, our app div only has one set of characters, which is image source equals to star.svg ID and class blah 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 blah. Right. So first, let's grab our app because we're going to be using it to create more stars in the future. And when we press S, we want to make more and more stars. So you might go, okay, well, there's one way we can change the HTML and put other new characters inside. How will we change the HTML? Inner HTML. So we can go app div dot inner HTML is equal to image source equals to star dot svg and class equals to stars, like so. Because then we'll be making new star images every time we press S. But what's wrong with that? What's going on when you do that? What's happening on the screen when you do that? Is it overwriting it? Let's see. Well, let me refresh first. Let's see. Right now, if I press S, nothing happens. Well, it does because we can see that star was replaced over and over again. All right, keeps getting replaced. It's flashing. That means it's getting replaced over and over again. We don't want it to get. We don't want it to replace. We want to add on to it. Right? We don't want to get a piece of paper and write like once upon a time, and then you erase it and write once upon a time again. We want to keep writing once upon a time over and over and over again. How can we take what we already have and add on to a new image? How would you do that? How do we take a number and add on to a new number? And so that the number keeps increasing by one? No. Good guesses, but no. So how do we do the number increasing every time we click on something? Num equals num plus 1, right? So how do we add on new characters and take on the previous and add on to it? Same logic. So it's whatever character was before plus what's the variable that has what's inside before? What's the variable that has it? This one right here. Right. This one has all the previous stuff. Instead of replacing it, we can go take what we already have and add on to it. Now this is what we call a very hacky way of building new information on the screen, right? Because this concept actually expands to a lot of really unique ideas. Instead of just modifying what's on the screen, we are now building new information on the screen. And you can do this, how many times can you do this? Infinitely, until your hard drive or browser runs out of room, right? So, you know, if you ever wonder, oh look, Instagram, right? It keeps adding on new stuff every time someone does something. It keeps adding on, like there's no limit to it. Well, this is the same idea. We keep adding on new characters onto the HTML through a script over and over and over again. Now, the reason it's a hacky way of doing it is because you'll notice there is a very big limitation from doing this. This is useful if you never plan to touch the stars again, because you have no access to the stars ever again. You have no access to any of the stars ever again, since it's all hard-coded. You will never have any access to it again. Like, what if I want to make each individual star do something, right? I need access to it so that each individual does something. So this is a very hacky way of going about it. It works if it's simple, but if it's a little bit more complicated, then it will not work. So we're not going to go through the hacky way. We're going to go through the technical way of building new information on the screen, which is we're going to comment that out. And we are going to build new information through a script. You'll make a variable to store these new information. It'll look something like this. Var star image is equal to document, meaning your HTML documents, dot create element. And the elements that we're creating is an image. So what this does is your document, your script is going to create an element in the memory. It's not in the body. It's in the memory. And you'll know that it's not in the body because if you press S, nothing shows up. But it's in the memory. So it will create this image tag in the memory. And until you put it into the body itself, you can't see it. But what we can do is we can start putting attributes to it. One of the attributes is the source, right? Star image. How do I change the source of this image? What do I type so that the source changes? Dot inner HTML. How do I change the source? Image source. How do I change that? Dot src is equal to star dot svg. So you create a new tag. You change on the attribute, which is source. What's another attribute that we have to change so that it's equivalent to this image tag that's over here? What's another attribute that we have? The class, right? So we're gonna have to change this class, and class is the only tricky one because you can't use the word class. That's already taken. So you have to use something called class name is equal to stars. So this line 25 to 28 is building this tag in the memory. Right. That tag is being built up in a technical format in the memory. And so afterwards we gotta put it into the body. So to do that, we take it's in the app div, right? So we're gonna take app div, and we use something called append child star image. So what this is saying is, take this child, which is the element that's going to be inside, and shove it into the div. So it will take this memory and put it inside the div itself. So that is the technical way of doing what we did here. And there is a very big advantage to this, because by doing it like this, you now have a variable that's reference to your new star. And having that variable gives us a lot of opportunities and options to do crazy things with it later on. Okay, so let's first test it out. That it still goes through. But this time, it's not the hacky way, but it's the more technical way. And if your star is hard to look at, you can always change some background colors. For example, just to fill my head a little bit so that it's not too crazy, we can go to our CSS, and I want some dark background color, right? So that my stars kind of, but what I really want is to fix its position, left of 0, top of 0, and then you don't have to, you don't want it, but I just want to make it like a little sky at the back. So that it's like kind of its own way, building up the stars. Hundred view width, 100 view height. No, because animation started from the beginning. We'll get into that much later.
Oh, okay. Change like this, change the child of this instead of changing.
I just don't understand that. I do have to do by the accounts. Yeah. Yes. So, if you want to change
to show and the CEP event. But what is that?
Only at one place. Even though the story is short, but you will always
He's gonna find one.
so, but by creating the function itself,
I saw this new notification.
it actually is a like right now you probably not see it. You would register much later.
Oh, nice. It's like.
I know.
Now, anyone else by any chance? You put a div there, then you won't get any.
We have one.
So this is the thing.
Dude, I can help you with your review package.
Yeah.
Maybe Spark.
You assuming that everybody else.
Sign me in, dude.
Because you have
No, it's only the bush for all. Yeah, the ones that you did. Oh, you were. Oh, yeah. Everyone's like, oh, it's so hard. I want to. That was the one thing.
Yeah, it's not.
Last version, like, oh, you're not there. Okay, it's not here.
Yeah.
This guy was so angry yesterday.
Might as well give you take this to 20 years.
Okay, continuing on. Is it good? Continuing on. So what we're gonna do. So part of the experience or the learning curve is not just that you know the syntax, but how much can you cram inside in your brain to how much can you visualize what's happening in your brain as you're typing. You'll notice that right now we have 30 lines of code, right? And as we add more individual features, it gets extends longer. If you look at like some of the projects that second years are doing, they have like 30, 40 files of JS files everywhere. And part of your experience is to see how much you can tolerate and expand the tolerance on the amount of code that's inside. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna have two different interactions here that creates a star. One is a key up, and one is when your mouse moves on the screen. Okay, but you'll notice if we do that, then we have to copy and paste this entire thing for a mouse move. And if at any point we change the name of the image, we have to go to two different places to rewrite it. Right? And then you think about other applications. How many different ways does Instagram put a new photo up? When you update something, when your friend updates something, when your people you like update something, and each one has individual, like when they delete something, when they create something, there's like hundreds of places, right? So we don't want to go to 100 of different scripts just to edit something. This is why in the beginning for now, you will learn that function is a very unique, useful thing to wrap everything together. There's a lot of usage for a function, but for now, the most important thing for you to remember about function is you can wrap all the scripts in one so that you can reuse it for many different places. So for example, if I type function create star and then copy everything from 25 to 28 and paste it down here. From now on, if I want to create a star, I will just call create star. So whether it's typing the S key, or maybe typing another key like space or enter, or whether you are listening to a mouse move, window.add events listener, mouse move function create star. Then as soon as you call onto the function will execute each individual line of script. So they're just a container for you anyway, for now. They're just a container to wrap a lot of things around and execute at the same time. To reference this as a real life experience for you, just imagine your parents telling you to clean up. Right? They can tell you to take out the trash and wash the dishes. That's two different scripts that they're telling you. But they're gonna wrap this all up and say, from now on when I say clean the kitchen, that includes take out the trash, wash the dishes, and do multiple things. All right. So they don't have to say, hey, take out the trash, wash the dishes, wipe the floor. All I have to do is now I just have to say clean the kitchen. And you have to do all three regardless. And later on, if they need to add more tasks, they're just like, hey, every time I say clean the kitchen, I'm going to add extra tasks to it. I'm going to add an extra task to it. So now you have 4 things to do when you do clean the kitchen. And later on, your list expands because you just keep thinking there's more features for you to clean. You cannot just wash the dishes. You have to wash the dishes with a blue cloth only. So more features to your cleaning, but all they have to say is clean the kitchen. And you know that these are the things, the features that you've typed in, right? So with that, your function will help you do the things that you want to do, either the mouse move or S. But now, more importantly, is we're going to add on to it because we don't like one size. We like multiple sizes. So we can imagine if it was in 2 different spaces, then you would have to add the scripts in 2 different places, right? But now we're going to do it a little different. We have a function, and all we have to do is modify the function, and it will apply to every single space that's using the function. So we're going to have a different width every time. So var w is equal to 50, and h is equal to 50. And we're going to change an attribute so that it uses this width and height. What's the attribute that we're changing? Style, yeah, I heard that. And what else? Width is equal to w plus pixel. And the other one is height. So if we didn't put this all into a function, we'll have to go to 2 different spaces, one at S and one at mouse move, and add them in, right? And it becomes super messy because you don't know if you add it, if there's 10 lines, you don't know if you added all 10 lines. If there's 20 lines, you don't know if you added all 20 lines. If you miss one line, then you cry. That's okay. That's part of the process. But with this, it's more organized. But what's the point of doing this? I could have just written 50 pixels. Why would I do W and H? So we can change it, and we are gonna change it to a random size every time. Random size times 50, and we are going to round it off. So that it's a random size times 50 and a random size times 50 for its height. So now, every time you move your mouse, it'll be a random size of width and random size of height for the stars going in. And again, the idea is that if you understand that everything is to do with numbers, and you can change the numbers by using some kind of math, then you can do a lot of things. For example, in the other set, someone asked about rotation. Can we make the star rotate? Well, can you make the star rotate in CSS? Does anyone know? What do you do to make the star rotate? You use transform. Okay, let's look at CSS rotate, right? Let's see what we have to do here. This is, you have to use transform, rotate, and 20 degrees, right? What are we going to take out so that it's a different rotation every time from the value over here, the word? What are we going to take out so that it's a different rotation every time? The 20 degree, or more specifically, the number 20, right? It will have its own variable because it's going to change every time, all right? So we can just start typing it out, which is star image dot style. And what's the CSS attribute that we're going to change? Transform. So style dot transform form. And we can type out the whole thing first. Rotate 20 degree, like so, right? But the item we're gonna take out is the 20 over here, because we're gonna replace it with a variable, since we want that to change every single time. So we'll take it out and quote it out and quote it back in. And there will be a variable here. Where's the variable? What variable do we type in here? We don't have one. We didn't create one yet. Okay, so we're gonna create one. So we'll call it rotate for rot for rotate. And we'll do a random and round again. But this time, we are not gonna multiply by 50. Why not? Why don't we multiply by 50? There's 360 degrees, so what should we multiply by? If I want a random degree every single time from its own whole circulation. 360. 360, and then we can add in the rot variable. So you should start noticing the patterns that we're doing. We're always figuring out what's the number and what we can build from the number. Right, this will give us a rotation of the stars. A random rotation from 360 degrees. But that's still not neat enough. Right now, it's too It's too systematic. It only goes from left to right. I want it to be at a random spot on the screen when I move the mouse. A random spot on the screen. What does that mean? The position has to change. All right, so we'll start with the CSS. What's the position that we have to give our stars? Position absolute. And you might go, well, why don't we just put it under the script itself? Well, you could. That doesn't matter. But since it's going to apply to every one of them anyway, you might as well just do it here.
It's like all stacking each other. It's like,
Huh?
yeah.
They're stacking on top of each other, right? How do we give it a random position? What's its left and what's its top every single time?
Okay, so we're rotating stars on top.
No. Try it. Well, you can try it out. I mean, I'm gonna go over it. I just have to make sure everyone's still like on the right track. So you need to give a left and a top value that's different every single time. How would you go about doing that? Does it not absolutely? Yeah, because it's absolute right now. So they're all on the top left. So we're gonna have to change the top and left, right? To a random number. How do we change the top and left of a style? What do we do? How do we change the top and left? Style.top. Okay, again, we'll use a arbitrary number like 10 pixel, right? And the left also 10 pixel. And we know, again, that these numbers are going to be replaced by a variable again. So T for top, math.round, math.random. And this time you're like, oh, 1,000? 2,000? 100? Or you can get your window to tell you how big it is right now and use its dimension. So you can use the window's inner height as the top. And what do you think the left one would be then if that's window's inner height? Inner width. Window.inner width. So every software and hardware sends information to your script, including the window. They'll tell you how big it is at the moment every time you ask for it. And instead of 10 pixel, you gotta replace it with the variable. Right? It can't be 10, but it's top, the variable for top, and the variable for left. And you notice every time we add a new feature, it gets bigger. Right? If we didn't put in a function, then we would have to put it up here, and then put it down there, and then put it up here, and put it down there. If there's 7 spaces for it, then you can imagine how messy it would be. If there are 7 ways to create stars, you would kind of feel how messy it would become. All right. Next challenge though. Technically, the smaller stars are farther away. So it should be more transparent. Well, how do we even figure that out? How do you know what opacity to? That's the question there. How do you know exactly what opacity?
Or the size of the size, right? Depending on the size. If the small is small, then the best should be. Give us, yeah.
So if it was like 5, that'd be 5, 10.
So the comparison should be low or this or the small.
Because if you don't do that, then it won't be small. This is saying that puts this image tag into the active. Before you do it, it won't be anywhere. It's only in the memory. So you change all the active, it's still in the memory. And now it's not actually.
Wait, after grab and source and last name?
Oh, so that we can apply our CSS.
Well, yeah, size, yeah, size.
Source is to
Yeah, size.
actually use the star image.
Smaller than, it's just grab, smaller than.
It's to make it not star.
0.8.
Class
Smaller
equals
than,
star.
3, and then 0.
So that.
So it's smaller grab.
So it becomes class equals. That means your app doesn't have a background color anymore. Yeah, so if you know math, then you can figure out an equation on how to make its opacity correlates to the size. Smaller the size, what's opacity, right? What's the range for your opacity? 0 to 1. So the smaller the size, the closer it is to 0. The bigger the size, the closer it is to 1. What's the maximum size we can have for a star right now? 50, right? So if the width is 1, it should be closer to 0. If the width is 50, it should be 1. What's the equation to do that? Var OP for opacity is equal to width divided by 50. Because if the width is 50, what's 50 divided by 50? And if the width is 1, what's 1 divided by 50? So you get the idea, right? By using different math, you can correlate different features to it. By using different math, you can correlate different features to it. So the smaller ones are more transparent. The bigger ones are more opaque. To give you a sense of depth in there. You can also say the bigger ones shine brighter by giving it better yellow if you want, or giving it a box shadow of yellow. But in any case, by knowing a little math, you can also determine depth. Right? So the ones at the farther back is more transparent. We went from 4 lines to create a star and adding in multiple features to how many lines? Like 10-ish now, maybe? Almost 20.
How do you change color to random?
Then how do you change color to random?
From SD to
You will have to make an opacity for your polygon, white transparent background. And then afterwards, you just change the background color. You have to actually go to Illustrator and change it. Oh, transparency.
I don't know if my random math's working properly.
That's because your position is not absolute.
Oh.
Yeah, change it.
Change the star steps to
Yeah. Position absolute.
There we go. Why does it do that?
Huh?
So then, like, each one has a random position and it's absolute?
Yeah, because absolute you can place it to a left and top, right? If it's not absolute, you can place it to a left and top.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, let's see. For a show of hands, who's completely confused what just happened thus far? Okay, who understands it but will never be able to replicate it? Who thinks they can replicate this no problem? All right. So it's always small increments, right? It starts off with a simple idea of building stars on the screen. Then you slowly add more and more features to it. And that's how you build what we call scripts and algorithms. You start with one if statement and you slowly build more if statements. You start with one simple line and slowly build more. Now, the next thing we want to do is we don't want it randomly on the screen now. We had enough fun of that. We want to make it follow wherever our mouse is moving. We're going to create stars to wherever our mouse is moving. That means we need to know the X and Y positions of our mouse. And how do we know that? So you recall there is an object that tells us, there's an event object that tells us exactly where it is. Do you remember what it is? I mentioned it before. No. Yeah, well, like what's inside there? What's one item that inside there tells us exactly where our mouse is on the page? You console.log it and you see one item in there. It's called page X and page Y. So we're gonna create 2 arguments for our function. You'll learn more about these in due time, but an X and a Y. And you're gonna pass on wherever your mouse is, ev.pageX and ev.pagey. Your mouse is telling you information of where it is on the page right now. And that's the page X and the page Y variable that your mouse is giving out. Instead of a random for top and left, we're no longer going to use the random. We'll comment this out for now. Comment, and we're going to do a top equals to X and a left that's equal to Y. So what's happening here is we are passing this information to here, then to here, and then use it here. And same with Y. From here, to here, and then here, and then use it here. So what you should get is a weird stuff that's going on. Why is that? What's happening? It's like inverted. Hey, someone tell me why it's inverted. Why is it inverted? It's going the opposite direction that I wanted to go.
Because you
Inverted the x and y, very good. Because top is the y, whereas left is the x. Right. That is your star system. Because you're using x. Yeah. When I receive the information in the function. What's that supposed to be? 3 volts. Okay, we're not done, obviously. Okay, so what if we want to, right now it automatically creates. What if we don't want to create unless we press the option key or alt key to create? Do you remember there was an attribute that detects whether the alt key is pressing? Do you know what that attribute was? What's the name of the attribute that tells us whether the alt key was pressed or not? Key code? There was an actual attribute called if ev.alt key. If the alt key is true, only if it's true do we create the star. Right? So that it doesn't just create on the spot, it will only create when we press the option key. So you can see features keep building on as you're making and making. There's new ideas and new features that will come in your mind, and they're all related to numbers, characters, booleans. Like the idea is that I don't want it to create the star on the spot. So what's the boolean or what's the number associated? Well, right there. The idea is I want it to go to wherever my mouse is. What's the number? What's the boolean associated to it? There it is. And you just keep coming up with ways to figure out where these numbers are, what they do, and how they can be used for your UI. All right. Now, since last week, we learned about timers. We're going to also associate a timer to this. What we're going to do is we're going to make the star disperse right afterwards. Not right after, maybe 1 second afterwards. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a transform to our transition. 1 second. Okay, so before we go on and just like copy paste everything, right? Let's figure out what we even mean. What does it mean that the image is gonna disperse? What does it mean at all that the image is gonna disperse? It's gonna move away somewhere else, right? What does that mean in number sense? In a number sense, what does that really mean? It's gonna move away from the mouse. It's gonna change its x and y, or what in CSS what's it called? Left and top, right? It's gonna change its left and top. So left 1 second and top 1 second. So the number for the left and top is gonna change. And that's important because now that we know the number is gonna change, we can build a timer that changes that number. We're going to, at the very end, do a timer here. Set, what's the name for it? Interval. And there will be a function for it. And it will happen every 1 second. I mean, you can make it faster if you want, but for me, it's going to happen every 1 second. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it a new top. So var, let's say nt for new top, is equal to, it's going to be a random place in the window. So what we had before. And new left is going to be a random place in the window, like what we had before. And then afterwards, what do? We have to change our top and left to the new top. And the left to the new left. And if you want them to rotate, you can have a new rotate as well. I'll let you try that on your own. And so that it's transform as a new rotate. Right. So with this, whenever we make a star, every 1 second, and because this is in a variable being referenced, we can rechange that reference over and over again. So what you would have now is disperse on its own. Now, if you don't want them to keep moving like that, that's fine as well. Different effects, right? If you don't have any transitions for the left and top, it has a pretty neat effect too. Do you know what it'll do? Anyone ever tried? Can you get? If you have to guess, what do you think it looks like? If there's no transition for the left and top.
Just drawing a line.
Not particularly, but it'll look pretty nice. If there's no transition. So different effects, different, but all comes from some simple number altering. Now, if you want them to move once and that's it, there's a way to do that too. You can do something called a set timeout. If you do a set timeout, then it will only move the first time, which will look something like this. And then that's it. And then move once, and that's it. So timeout is once, interval is repeated amount of times. Simple, fun things that you can do. So I'll type out set timeout equals to once. Only when you press the on. Oh, you could start. So if the class never stops. Your first file stops.
Oh. Sorry.
Because you did transition to left and top.
Just like shoots the thing all the time. No, it's just ping. The comment is ping to you send a request to the computer. And when you send like 10 million requests, then it's just very like you're like all
Yes.
Come to the board or come to the back board.
It's your practice. Your other stuff was contained to yeah, everything. Okay. So you never
Just send a bunch of pictures of dicks, and then like have the dicks multiply.
Is this one?
It's a shutdown. Someone just pointed out that it's like math.
Because the left and top is not transition to CSS. If you transition to left and top, so right now it's just flashing because it's going to a new left and new top without transition to right. So if you add left 1 second and top 1 second. I mean, if you really want to test the limit, you can try like, oh, what if it's 100 milliseconds, and then the CSS like what's 100 milliseconds in 1 second? 0.1, right? 0.1. Then you go like, let's see how fast it goes, right? It's like ridiculous. You're using right. How come it's only right? Using right. I don't think that's the right. Oh, okay. Go back. No, it's math on math. That's why it's not. Oh, yeah. All right. Now, we're done pretty much. So to show you how functions could be pretty fun to use, is that, you know, we're creating one right now, right? You can maximize it and create like 10 at the same time. So 10 stars per mouse move, right? So that would be. And it lags your screen right away. I mean, it's already super laggy because there's probably hundreds of scripts running at the same time. And if you try to open this, right, you try to open this and look at the transform, it's like the most ultimate lag. In any case. Okay, so that's it. So next week's the test. If you struggle with the review package, most likely you'll fail the test. Yeah. So make sure if you need explanation or help, Wednesday, Thursdays are good times. Otherwise, good luck.
Is the test going to be as long as the review package?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But it's going to be completely different.
It will be completely different.
Okay.
Huh? Actually, for the review package, I already took out 3 things inside.
Pardon?
That was last year's test. I took out 3 things inside.
Oh, last year's test?
Yeah. I think there were like 2 completions on that last year. Yes.
It's going to be open to interpretation though, right? Like, if you can make it work and it works, or is it going to be like, you're going to be like, okay, well, it's not proper, but it's working, so I'll give you half marks.
I would give you half marks if it's similar or you're on the right track to getting what I want to see.
Okay. But you're going to be specific about what you want, right?
Well, it's just like the package.
Okay.
Yeah, very specific.
Yeah. It wasn't that bad. I just found it was kind of confusing when it was like hover over this and then display it with the background. That one kind of tricked me a little bit, but then I realized after Matt figured it out, he's like, it's pretty simple. Just this equals this. And then it just worked.
Yes.
But I was trying to do like if statements and like variables with numbers.
That's okay. I think that's what one person did last year too.
But it takes so much longer, right? Because then you have to get all 12 images somehow.
Oh, yeah. All right. Good luck. Have fun. Good.